So from that, let's now move on to one form of content to another, because I'm sure that probably even before all of you logged in, I won't be surprised if I probably even admit that I was probably catching up a show on Netflix before the show even started over here, because so many of us are capturing different moods, different agendas for that matter, and we're trying to either gather it in the form of a movie, or for that matter, a documentary, or maybe some kind of a sitcom, some kind of a light-hearted set of content. But whatever it is, we do realize that it's time to set the new entertainment agenda. Well, guess what? That's a conversation we're planning to have in the agenda over here at Global Business Summit. Now, as we speak about Netflix, I think it is not a surprise when we look back as to how Netflix began its worldwide expansion back in 2016, the streaming service that has managed to rewrite the playbook for global entertainment when we talk about from television to film and, of course, soon video games. Now, we do realize that Hollywood used to export most global hit series and movies, but thanks to Netflix investments in international television and film, when we look at some of the big hits, such as Squid Game, or for that matter, Money Heist, and many more, even the ones wherein we get to see a lot of new content being churned out in India as well, we do see that Netflix has figured out that to thrive on an international stage, it needs both the best of programming as well as local content. So I think it's time for us to understand the entire way of setting the agenda when it comes to entertainment. Now, as I take the name of Netflix, it's only befitting that we hear out all the insights coming in from none other than Ted Sarandos, the co-CEO and Chief Content Officer, Netflix. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he oversees the teams responsible for the acquisition and creation of all Netflix content, including original series from around the world, such as Stranger Things, Dark, that's from Germany, or for that matter, La Casa de Papel, Spain, or as we know, Money Heist, Squid Game, Korea, The Fame Game, India, and The Witcher, Poland. And films, of course, including The Irishman, Red Notice, Power of the Dog, Don't Look Up, and the three-time Academy Award-winning film Roma and the Academy Award-winning Marriage Story. Now, he's been responsible for all the content operation since 2000 and led the company's transition into original content production that began in 2013 with the launch of the series House of Cards, as well as Arrested Development and Orange is the New Black, among numerous others. Ladies and gentlemen, while Ted Sarandos will be also sharing his thoughts and his agenda with regard to kind of entertainment, the way entertainment is poised, let me also tell you it is only befitting to gather these thoughts from someone who is also one of the doyens in the industry. Well, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Siddharth Roy Kapur, founder and managing director, Roy Kapur Films, because when we talk about this conversation, it's got to be as entertaining and as insightful as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, Siddharth Roy Kapur, in fact, began his career with Procter & Gamble Company in Mumbai in brand management. But as we all know that he joined UTV in 2005, and since then there's been no looking back because he's led the marketing efforts behind multiple path-breaking films, including the cult BAFTA-nominated blockbuster Rang De Basanti and the sleeper hit Ghosla Ka Ghosla, both of which were released in 2006 and started a new trend in the way movies were marketed in India. In fact, in his next role, he also took over the revenue function at UTV Motion Pictures and was also responsible for the distribution and syndication worldwide, in addition to his marketing responsibilities. Well, I'm sure while we're talking about a very entertaining time ahead, ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves because it's time to gather all these amazing insights around the entertainment and what's the agenda next. Coming up, let's find out in this conversation featuring Ted Sarandos and Siddharth Roy Kapur.
Hi, everyone. I'm here today with Ted Sarandos, who actually needs no introduction. I've been told I've got 25 minutes for this, so I'm not going to bore you with a long intro on Ted, which I'm sure you all have already read or heard, in any case. So Ted, hi, thanks for joining us. I'm playing a bit of a journalistic role today, which I'm not used to doing, so excuse my lack of reporting experience and journalistic experience, but I hope this is a great chat.
Thank you. Great to see you this morning, Sid.
Likewise. So Ted, I think it'll be great for you to maybe talk us through your journey a little bit from what Netflix started out as, which was really an online DVD rental company, and then pivoted so incredibly to creating content that is known and loved around the world. I mean, we all thought that Orange is the New Black was really one of the first shows that Netflix greenlit, but I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the first piece of content that you actually greenlit was a little Norwegian show back in 2012, I think it was.
Yeah. It was my journey with Netflix started actually in 1999, but when Netflix was a little known DVD by mail company in the US. And I had my first encounter with Reed Hastings, the co-founder and currently my co-CEO here at Netflix. And the wild thing about the Netflix journey is that Reed's vision for Netflix in 1999, when I first met him, was almost exactly as it is right now. And I think it's one of the great testimonies to focus in American business and in global business I've ever seen. Because it was Reed, I would full credit to Reed Hastings for having vision and keeping his eye on the prize, even when things got very tough, and making this migration from a domestic only physical media by mail company to where we are today, which is one of the biggest producers of original content around the world. I think one of the greatest exporters of European content in the world.
So his vision at that time was actually, I mean, that's pretty incredible to know, was actually for Netflix to be a huge streaming and creating platform that runs across the world in as many countries as you do.
The creating platform we didn't talk about in that first meeting, but at the time we were talking about it as a downloading platform. Streaming did not yet even exist. But Reed was very clear about the idea that the internet would be the way that most people watched most entertainment around the world. And at that time, the internet was so slow and so expensive that hardly anybody watched any entertainment on the internet. So it was a really wild vision in a time. And I'm not positive, Sid, if I really even believed him when we met, because it was such a wild vision. But he talked about it with such clarity and conviction that I was sure that if he didn't do this, he was going to do something else amazing. And I wanted to be part of that.
How hard was it, Ted, for you to break into Hollywood? Because, I mean, in the Indian film industry as well, it is a little bit, or it used to be a little bit about to the manner born, and you needed to be able to be born into the industry, around 20 years ago to be able to get into it. And then there were professionals like us who came in, but it happened over a period of time, and it took a lot of doing. And I dare say, I think the same was true in Hollywood as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, for me, I was very much an outsider in this industry, having come in it through, at best, the closest I got to being in the film business was being in the home video entertainment business, both as a video distributor and in video retail back in the days when video retail was the way that people really loved to watch movies and TV. But I look back now at that time and say, probably the thing that made me as successful as we have been to date has been, I've approached this not as someone who was born into the industry or with wild connections, but somebody who loves what I do, a real fan. So my pedigree is mostly in my fandom, which I think is recognized by the talent that works with us, and then inspires them, I hope, to do the best work of their lives. Now, since those early days, I've had to do the other hard bit thing, which is to bring people of like mind to the table so that we could scale and build these teams around the world who also love the content that we produce and love what we do and love to enable storytellers to do the best work of their lives.
What's the best way that you believe one should deal with creative people? Because I think a lot of executives struggle with this from time to time. They veer between the very intensive, exhaustive notes, sort of pendulum on one side, to a really light touch, let's just let the creator do exactly what they want to do sort of approach on the other. What do you think is the right balance, and how do you veer between the two depending on the situation at hand?
Creators are all different and they all come at these projects differently. Our team, mostly our goal is to help them bring their vision to light. So there's no shortage of good ideas, but it's very, very difficult to actually bring your story to life, to actually deliver on the promise of a great story idea. Our team, the goal that our creative executives is that we have to add value. So we don't want to give notes to give notes. We basically have to earn our place at the table. So once we say yes to a project, I mean, our biggest superpower, right, is our ability to predict this one over that one. Last year, we made 30 original projects in India. 30, that sounds like a lot, but it's in a land of 1 billion stories. So we really are trying to really, figure out what to do. And we believe that the people who create these stories are really understand it better than we do. And then we might be able to be helpful of how to bring it to light in a better way. So, but it's a very much an earned relationship. Our creative executives have to earn a place at the table and be a partner with our storytellers. And they do that by adding value. And if they don't add that much value, they don't get invited back.
Got it.
And Sid, I hope that's been your experience. I know you have worked with Netflix on a couple of great projects.
It has.
I hope that's
and I think that's something that, as you said, is a very interesting part of dealing with a company like Netflix and with other streaming platforms, where I guess the comfort level of the creator with a certain executive gets that much stronger when you realize that that those notes are in service of the vision that they had greenlit in the first place, versus, as you said, just notes for the sake of notes, which is very clearly discernible to a creator. So I think that's a very great distinction to be made.
And I can tell you, back before we were making original programming, getting to meet great creators around the world, those are the horror stories that they tell, is the getting the notes for notes' sake. So I knew going into it, there was a few things to avoid, and that would be a big one.
That was one of them. Tell the volume in terms of the dollar values of the capital going into streaming content around the world, both at, obviously Netflix, but also at HBO and at Apple and at Amazon and at Disney, is really.
Wait a minute, I'm going to write those down. I never heard of those, but hold on.
Okay, so I'm going to be asking you a lot about those now. Is really enormous. I mean, when you look at the dollar value going into it compared to the amount of sort of dollars that went into content probably 5 years ago or like a decade ago, certainly. How long do you think that's sustainable, and what do you think will need the ecosystem will need to do to be able to keep that going in the same intensity with which it is right now?
Look, I think you're right. This is the most exciting time in the history of filmed entertainment, and the most exciting time for storytellers to get their stories to screen. The most exciting opportunity to connect stories with an audience. And the internet has been this incredible tool to do that, either on a very small scale, a very kind of one-to-one storytelling that you could do on something like YouTube, or on a more elaborate scale, like you could do on Netflix, where you're actually telling a story at grand scale to the entire world. I feel like those things are very uniquely enabled by the internet, and then over the years have been expanded upon in terms of the opportunity by Netflix, by having the willingness to accept that great stories can come from anywhere in the world. So when in the past, when they talk about things like the golden age of television, that's all American stories for the world. Where right now, what's great about this golden age of television and film is that it really is from anywhere in the world. Aranyak played all over the world. It was in the top 10 list in most for non-English TV all over the world for us, which is incredibly exciting. And it happens over and over again. It could be, we saw it last night at the Screen Actors Guild Awards with Squid Game being the first non-English cast to win that award. It's just phenomenal. And I think we saw that in earlier sessions as well. And then, and the enormous fandom that a show like La Casa de Papel or Money Heist can have all over the world, including in India, gives us the opportunity to say, wow, great stories really can come from anywhere in the world, and that everyone in the world, all great storytellers, have an opportunity to participate in this new golden age of entertainment.
What do you think we need to do as Indian creators to be able to have our own Money Heist happen, or to have our own Squid Game happen?
I think it's inevitable, Sid. There's no question. You look at projects like, Delhi Crime just won the International Emmy for Best Television Series, which is phenomenal. And I think that is an inevitability, given the rich storytelling culture in India and the distribution platform that we can offer, that Squid Game, that Money Heist could definitely come from India next.
What do you think is the future of the theatrical business, Ted? Because the last 2 years have obviously propelled audiences into different patterns of behavior. We've seen that, theatrical's taken a while to come back. We're now seeing some green shoots emerge where movies are doing much better at the box office than they probably were doing a few months ago, because with COVID protocols being eased up.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the long-term future of the theatrical business?
I think that, over time, COVID has probably generated some new habits for people. So it's a little less exotic to premiere a big movie at home than it used to be. But I do think people love the theatrical experience. I do too. I'm dying to go back to the movie theaters. I do think it's become more difficult, than the likely course to get people back to the theaters will be bigger and bigger spectacle films, which will create more risk in the business, and probably fewer films, less access to screens for films that are not as big as Spider-Man. So I just think in a way that the evolution will be that I'm sure the theatrical business will be around for a very long time. There'll likely be fewer films, bigger films, probably more expensive for a movie ticket. But I think there's still that experience, I think, is separate and apart from premiering at home. But it's pretty tough to beat your couch when a big movie premieres on Netflix.
Would you therefore believe that the independent cinema movement is probably fatally hit by what's happened in terms of streaming, and then the pandemic happening simultaneously, and therefore, as you said, bigger movies probably being the ones that audiences would get up off their couch for, and the more independent based movies that were being done by the Sony Classics or the Fox Searchlights, or like sort of the Paramount Vantages of the world, not really being a thing anymore?
I'm not positive about that, Sid. I know that, it's definitely stratified, right? The bigger films will have a life that way. And it could be that the smaller, more intimate films have also a different scaled life at the other end of the spectrum. The thing to be careful, I think, is those films in the middle that are likely to get lost.
Right. So now coming to India, what do you feel has been the experience really of Netflix in India so far? There's been a lot of speculation around how you perceive India and what you believe the journey for the company has been so far, because of a few things that Reed might have said in the last quarterly call, etc., about the fact that there's some level of frustration around the pace of progress, probably that you're being able to make in the Indian market. It'll be great to hear from you about what you're feeling about that.
Well, everyone should hear that we are in love with and committed to India. We have our enthusiasm for India has not waned a bit since we've launched. Launching anywhere in the world is difficult. We've not had an easy go of it anywhere, including in the United States, where what we do is a very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult to compete with legacy players who've been doing this for 100 years. So, and we've always dealt with intense competition and rural internet limitations and credit card payment processes that are different around the world. So that's not really new in that way, but finding the right formula we have found really is about persistence and commitment and staying the course and staying steady and constant little improvements to the business. So India has not been different in that way. And so I think what's exciting for us is the opportunity is so large that the storytelling appetite is so big that as we can get the storytelling right, the rest will fall into place. And we're really excited about how the progress that we made there and the films and series that we're making for India, but from India for the world, which is even more exciting for most folks. So we're thrilled, enthusiastic, and fired up about the opportunity in India and for India around the world on Netflix.
Would it be a hypothesis that because India's got such a strong indigenous filmmaking culture and a television culture and its own stars and its own sort of ecosystem of creators, which probably might not be something you've encountered that strongly in certain other markets, that India's a little bit of a different beast?
I mean, of the 30 original projects we made last year, they were made in 7 different languages, which is a very big, that's a big difference for us from operating almost anywhere in the world. The variety of languages, the regional storytelling, being as successful it is from as many places as it is. It's absolutely but it's what makes it so exciting. So it makes it so exciting to jump out of bed every morning to make this work. Has been, the variety of things you have to do right to be successful in India. And we knew that going in. So we just have got to keep going. But remember, as we grew throughout, we launched our first international territory after North America was Latin America. And remember, but throughout Latin America, those countries had very little in common. They just happened to be in the same suite of countries that you can license content to. But Brazil couldn't be any more different than Mexico in its taste, in its star system, and its language, and its currency, and all those things. So, we've got a lot of experience doing that. What we have found is, though, as good as you can get in one country, it doesn't really teach you very much about the next country. So you just got to get good by doing it and by showing up and by being committed to constant improvement and in 100 different ways. And that's why I think Sid makes it so exciting about India is that there is no recipe that you have to get right. But you get it right by being more local. We built an incredible team in India who work in this beautiful new office in Mumbai, who have been able to be deeper and deeper in the culture than we could definitely be from the US. We made it a point to empower them to make the decisions on the ground in India for India. And that's what we think we're going to get the best results from. And they're on a great path, and we're super excited about the success coming.
I'd like to get a little into the way that you deal with failures and successes, Ted, just to get a sense of what your reaction to both is. Because we're in a very public business, and our failures are magnified and our successes are magnified. And it's always important to be able to try and maintain a bit of a balance. So I guess this question is about what would you consider professionally to be your biggest success? And what might you consider professionally to be your most crushing failure? And how did you deal with each one?
It's funny, I have 2 kids, Tony and Sarah. They're 25 and 27. And I always remind them that sometimes when you think about winning and losing, it feels like it's either straight up or straight down. And it turns out in looking backwards, it's never that, right? It's a series of highs and lows and hits and misses. And then you've got to kind of keep and you pull back. The further you pull back, the more it looks linear, either up or down. But the closer, when you're in it, it's really just a matter of navigating a series of wins and losses. So I'm thrilled with our success in original programming. It was a very big pivot, that started back with Lillehammer from Norway, and then has grown to what it is today. But our very first original content initiative was called Red Envelope Entertainment. It was a miserable failure, meaning I spent $10 million that the company didn't have to acquire and produce foreign language film and documentary and stand-up comedy. Very proud of the content that came through that, including Maggie Gyllenhaal's Golden Globe nomination for Sherry Baby, and Zach Galifianakis' first stand-up comedy special, and lots of great things that came through there. But from a business perspective, it was a terrible failure. We didn't have the scale yet to invest in original programming that way. So it was a very big learn, which was, you've got to get scale before you could do this again. And before we produced the original anything on Netflix, we had over 25 million people streaming content on Netflix. So what I learned early was you can't skip that step. You've got to build up the base and build up a good solid business before you can then take those risks on original programming. In the meantime, licensing programming got us to where we could launch something like Lillehammer, or on the scale of a House of Cards or Orange is the New Black. So that's, to me, it was a good learn early on, and it was an expensive one, but it was one of those ones you have to look back, even when you're feeling very full of your success, to remember those times when you misstepped a little bit.
What do you feel the next, say, 3 years will be like for Netflix? Is it just about doing more of the same, like just creating great content that sort of enraptures people around the world, or is it because you have gotten into gaming in a big way as well? Are there other parts of your business that you believe need to start popping for you to take the next level in your trajectory?
Yeah, look, when you say more of the same, it sounds kind of boring, but
no, I know it's a lot, believe me. I do know it's a lot.
So I say that
is it just sort of battling along and just keeping on at creating more great content, which of course you will do, but are there definitely parts of the business that you need?
It's definitely about taking things to the next level, right? So yes, we've just recently gotten into the game business. We're very excited about the opportunity that it offers our members who like to spend some of their time on screens gaming rather than watching. And then in this world where our world building and storytelling come together, in either in very interactive ways like through gaming, or through more lean back experiences like film and television, that we can be very good at all those things and bring value to our members. That's just super exciting. But what I'm really also excited about is this opportunity to take things to the next level. So remember, I've 22 years at Netflix. This year, we launched our two biggest films with Red Notice and Don't Look Up. The biggest films in the history of the company already. And then our biggest series in the history of the company, and maybe the history of television, was Squid Game. So being able to do more of the same, which means pushing things to the next level all the time, which is an endless opportunity to do variety and quality at the same time, to be the most Emmy-nominated, Oscar-nominated studio, and with two of the most popular films in the world at the same time. That to me is very, very exciting.
It is, and I guess the flip side of that is having to be a public company while you're doing it and dealing with quarterly, sort of ups and downs with regard to subscriber growth and things of that nature. How do you deal with that? Because there in the last few quarters there has been a bit of a dip in the rate of growth, and that's probably because a lot of growth came immediately when the pandemic kicked in, and a lot of future growth was factored in early. But how hard is it for the company to be able to still invest as much as it does in new programming when the stock price takes a bit of a hit because of the fact that subscriber growth is not what the market expects?
Look, we're fully confident that we're at the earliest stages of this kind of wave of adoption of consumers to services like Netflix. In other words, moving away from more linear television or more transactional film towards the high quality, high value subscription entertainment that we offer. We look at how rates of penetration are rather low, obviously compared to paid television or mobile adoption or all these different models that you might look at of how you can expand these services around the world. And we know, again, what I was just saying about these hills and valleys and hits and misses. We've had many of these throughout our experience, throughout our life cycle at Netflix. And our goal really is just to stay focused on constant improvement of the product and the service, and that we grow engagement of our members, like grow the content experiences that people are having around the world. When you have screen time, that you're spending it with us, and that we grow the revenue associated with that so that we can continue to invest in more high quality and more variety of entertainment.
The last question that I have for you, because I've been told I've got literally 3 more minutes, is which was your biggest fanboy moment with regard to being able to work with someone that you'd always looked at and thought was beyond reach when you started out with like sort of original programming? And what's your, and I'm going to put you a bit on the spot on this one, what's your favorite piece of content that you've ever greenlit at Netflix?
Well, the favorite one, I'm gonna have to pass the answer on it because that's like picking your favorite child. I can't do that. But I will tell, and by the way, most of the time now, it's not me making that green light, it's the teams around the world making that green light call. And I'm really proud of all the decisions that they make. But I will tell you, in front of a great fanboy moment, it wasn't, I've got to make films with my favorite directors like Martin Scorsese, work with my favorite comedians like Jerry Seinfeld and David Letterman, get to know Jane Campion on with Power of the Dog. It's been just an embarrassment of riches in terms of the relationships I've been able to enjoy. And one of those things where if you look back and tell your 10-year-old self that you're going to be doing this, you would have never believed that. But I will tell you one fun moment. It wasn't actually making one of our projects, but the first year I attended the Academy Awards, and we had a seat kind of back in the middle, and Francis Ford Coppola was sitting in front of us. And I'm an enormous Godfather fan. I think it's one of the greatest movies in American history, in the history of film. And I tapped my wife and I whispered in her ear, I said, "Oh my God, that's Francis Ford Coppola sitting right in front of us." And at the first break of the show, he turned around and said, "Hey, are you the guy from Netflix?" So I thought that was quite a moment that I was recognized by Francis Ford Coppola. not had the opportunity to work together yet, but I'm hoping to in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ted. Thanks so much for this. It was an incredible opportunity to have a chat with you, and I'm sure people are gonna get at me for not asking you many questions that they wish that I could have, but there was limited time. So this was.
I appreciate the time, Sid. I wish we had more time too.
Cheers.